You've likely heard about the top regrets of the dying. This was written about by the hospice nurse Bronnie Ware. And some of these include things you've probably also heard. I wish I didn't work so hard. I wish I kept in touch with my friends. But I believe in the next 15 years, we are going to start hearing another kind of regret. I wish I hadn't scrolled so much. I wish I hadn't wasted years of my life on the internet, something that we're going to get into in this video. So I'll give you a story of a time in my life where I had some cognitive dissonance with screens. In my 20s, I wasted a lot of time on the internet. Now, it wasn't every single minute of the day that I was on social media. I did some pretty interesting stuff, like I wrote a book, I had a business, I did some acting, but all of these things have a flexible schedule. So I also had many hours of the day that were not structured the same way someone that's working as a nurse or someone might have a very structured day. So I also might spend hours reading random articles that I would say was pertinent information. For instance, maybe reading the bios of someone that was doing something that I want to do. And really that was just kind of a comparison or procrastinating. Or I might say that I was using social media to market my business or my book, when really most of the time I was just distracted online. I would sit down and instead of being able to focus, I would find myself on Reddit or on YouTube or just getting out my phone to text someone back because I interrupted myself. They call that a self-interruption, which is different than an external interruption, which is receiving a text that you're notified about. A lot of times we're the ones distracting ourselves. We're pulled to different stuff online. And to make matters even worse, I felt the privilege. I felt somewhat pathetic in my struggles. We see beautiful hero's journey messaging in films and books or even real stories that we read about. And one of my great struggles is resisting touching a gray rectangular box. It felt like I was at the starting line constantly and just not fully in my life because enough of a percentage of my life was lost in this numbed out existence. I'll tell you the case for me and we'll see if it's the case for you. I know that I have wasted years of my life on internet rabbit holes, just bouncing around like a ping pong ball on the internet from one thing to another. Now, when I say wasted years, you might say years. That seems like a few minutes here or there. But if we were to add up, I think of it as like sweeping up the shards of this fractured time that we didn't even enjoy. I'm not talking about listening to a podcast or an audiobook that you loved while you did the dishes. I'm not talking about streaming a really moving film that you discuss with your friends later. I am not talking about emailing your aunt some sweet pictures. I'm not talking about anything that you found valuable. I'm throwing a quick chart up here on the video version to help differentiate what we are and are not talking about. I'm talking about time that if you could march back to the bank of time that you would demand a refund for because it was not valuable. The time that you're like, wow, where did that hour go? Or where did that day go at the end of the day when you look back? Because you spent it from one flashy icon to another. One article grabbed your attention and all of a sudden now you know all about how otters use different tools in the wild, but you did not get what you need to get done that day. Maybe that's just me, but I'm sure there's rabbit holes that you've gone down. And it's not, again, that these things are bad. I love reading about otters or different animals. It's that the internet disrespects the context of our lives. It's not the time or place for that information, but the internet, as Bo Berman put it, is anything and everything all of the time. So the first step is this inventory of where did my time go? Now, if you're curious to track your time in relation to the internet, I have a video on that I will link down below. I just think for a lot of us, around 2012 is when social media started to get a lot more prevalent. And if we were to think over the last 12 years, math-related edit, 13, probably for a lot of us, those hours and hours of time every day would amount to years. And either A, you don't need this video, or B, maybe it's you too and you just didn't realize it, like, wow, years. And I'm thinking ahead to the next decades, hopefully, if I'm blessed to be able to live that long, ahead of me, and what I want to do with that time. So that brings us to another step, is a vision for our future and how we want it to be different than our past. I want you to list out all of the things that you would have found more valuable than that time that kind of feels like it was flushed down the toilet. It might be more presence with loved ones, living according to your values, your purpose. It might just be having more fun. It might be making more money so that you could travel. It might be trying to take certain steps to start a family. I know that this sounds like I'm talking about these very trite, meaningless things like, oh, you watched a bunch of reels one day for an hour. And then now I'm zooming out and talking about very big things like, oh, you could have been dedicating your life to some cause or starting a business. And this is not about hustle culture, toxic productivity. Oh, you should always be productive. Not at all. It's just about realizing, oh my goodness, I wasted years of my life. I do not want to do that again in the coming decade. Now, some people might try to say, oh, that time wasn't wasted. I don't know. For me, I actually think it's really important to realize that it was, to have some ownership, some responsibility, some grieving, to grieve that time so that I can make a change and move in a new direction. And that might sound a little extreme for some people, but this is really meant for people that feel that tech has been adversely affecting their life. On the screen, I have listed here some other adverse effects that tech can have outside of feeling like our time is no longer our own. And as we're doing this reevaluation, part of that can be understanding why did we spend the time the way that we did? To understand what were we getting out of the time we were compulsively using the internet. There had to be a reason. We could say that it's dopamine, we could say that it's numbing out, but I think that these things are partial truths. I think that there are 100 reasons why someone might turn to their phone. Maybe they're scared to put themselves out there and be seen, so they hide behind consumption instead of creation. Maybe it's to avoid certain feelings. Oh, that was a weird interaction with someone. You feel embarrassed. Oh, just open your phone. Now you can forget about it for a second. But I would argue a lot of people do that without even realizing it. Maybe everyone around you is just on their phone for hours and you didn't really question it, that's maybe not how you want to spend your time. Another one could be as simple as, a lot of people these days believe that we're in the early stages of the internet. I know it might not feel like it because it's been around for a while, but we don't have a lot of safeguards in place to safeguard our minds or attention. We're almost in some giant experiment right now as all of us figure out how to navigate this tool that will be around forever and only expand from here. Maybe you just really hate being bored. You love stimulation. So it's very hard to get going in the day without a podcast. But then, oh, now you're laying in bed, picking out a podcast for 30 minutes, just sucked into a vortex, a matrix. You're just, whoop, you go in and sometimes you don't even realize that you're there because you go in for one thing. Maybe, oh, I need to message this person back for work. And then suddenly, through habit of certain apps you just naturally go to or notifications, it's almost like you don't snap out of it for a while and then you come out of the fog. And when you live in this very distracted way, bouncing around from one thing to another on the internet, it's almost like you're living life in a muted way. There's not the vibrancy of life around you. But life around us without it can feel kind of boring at first. It does feel like withdrawing. A lot of videos and books out there are all about how to change these habits. And they go into things like putting your phone in grayscale, putting a rubber band around your phone so you have to take the rubber band off to use it. And I mean, honestly, sometimes that stuff works. Like I started putting my phone in a fanny pack for a while and even just having to take my phone out to use it and instead using a watch or other analog tools really helped me have less pickups and less screen time. However, I think that there's a time where some of these hacks or tips, I think often they fall short. They maybe help us for a period of time, but they don't really solve the root of the problem. There's a Cal Newport quote that I love. I'm going to show the whole quote up here if you're watching the video version of this, but I'll just describe it here. He basically goes into the fact that trying to be mindful around tech is not enough. Setting certain screen time limits or, oh, I won't go on my phone on Saturdays, all of these things can be very temporary fixes. And you know, if you've ever tried something like installing an app limit on your phone and then you've just punched in the password whenever you reach that limit, all of these hacks or tips, first of all, do them if they help. I mean, my notifications are off, taking certain apps off your phone, all of that stuff can truly help. But what he is a proponent for in his book, Digital Minimalism, is completely changing your philosophy around tech. How are you going to use it? How much of it is beneficial to your life? And which parts of it maybe add to your life, but they detract from it more? All of the technology that we allow into our life needs to measure up if we were to evaluate its marginal cost and marginal benefit. And I highly recommend going through his book, Digital Minimalism, and he teaches you how to evaluate this tool is worth it, but I'm going to use it in XYZ way. An example of this is realizing that I could not have Instagram on my phone, that if it is, I'll go onto it in any free moment of downtime, and I'll always be on it longer than I realized. So instead, I go on desktop a couple times a week, maybe to DM someone back or just see what some friends have been up to, but it ends up being about a half hour a week rather than 45 minutes a day, which again, if someone wants to do that, if that feels valuable to them, that is totally fine. But it's just asking for each piece of tech, how you check the weather, your calendar, your email, how you get your news, asking, does this fit into my life in the optimal way? Is this the best way to achieve this goal? So it's like we're being thoughtful about each way we're interacting with screens and technology. And during this time, usually the first day is the hardest. The second day is a little bit easier. It gets easier and easier as you are weaning yourself off of this. But the other thing is, this might surprise you. The first 5 seconds are actually the hardest. Once you've made the decision of, I'm just going to cook and I don't need stimulation right now, I'll just cook with no input. It's not that hard once you're slicing the carrots. It is that pull away from it because it's like, I don't just want to slice carrots. I want to slice carrots and listen to that fun podcast. It feels more vibrant to have that extra bit with us versus the stillness, the solitude. But what's interesting is actually life is more vibrant when we tap more into it. It's kind of like we feel, I'm going to get more connection if I'm online with people, but then we realize, that's not the real stuff. When I don't have my headphones in and I walk and I talk to my neighbor and we have that little joking interaction in the morning because I was more present with my surroundings, how does that feel? So that's another step, is I want you to pay attention to how you feel. I want you to pay attention to how it feels when you're single tasking and you're really zoned in on a project, even if it's only for 25 minutes. I want you to pay attention to how it feels when you do something active. You're on a walk in nature and your phone is away. You're playing a sport with some friends. This gets us away from the morality, the right, the wrong, the judgment, guilts, and shoulds, and instead it taps us into, what do I want from my life from an intuitive place of knowing and what I actually long for? And that helps behavior stick. Because instead of making yourself feel guilty, instead you're realizing, I do not like how it feels after I've watched short form content for 1 to 2 hours. I do not like how my mind feels. Maybe you feel frazzled or anxious or it's harder to concentrate, and just getting in touch with that. And I truly think it relates to everything, because we're talking about your energy. We're talking about your attention. Who are you, if not for your ability to use your mind in the ways that you want to focus on what you want to? So it's really connected to everything. So yes, it's about our mind and our attention, but like we talked about in the beginning of this video, it is about our time. While it's not inherently bad to spend some time mindlessly on the internet, every hour that we spend doing that is an hour not doing something else that we might value more. And that's what this comes down to. The more I think about this, the more that I long for a life spent dedicated to things that truly matter to me. I'm weeping reading this book by Richard Powers. It's called Playground, and it's about the ocean and our relationship to it and technology and the environment. Anyway, I feel so moved to do something. And I know that if I waste my life away scrolling, I'm going to be filled with regret later. As we talked about in the beginning, there might be regrets as to how you've lived your life up until now. But you can change. We can change. And I'm making this video just as much for myself as I am for you, a place to come back to when we need this reminder about what's important and where our time is going. And maybe simply making this whole experience of using technology more conscious. On the days or weeks where you're more pulled to use it, is that because you're lonely and then watching TV shows makes you feel less alone? Is it that you don't want to be in your own head because there's something you're avoiding thinking about, so then having something on in the background helps take you away from that? We just want to bring these thoughts and feelings to light that maybe we've been stuffing down, and then those certain behaviors are having adverse effects on our lives, but sometimes we don't even know why they're happening in the first place. Maybe there can be some supportive thoughts in the comments for each other. My personal goal with tech, I change constantly. I'll come up with different frameworks, but right now, the way I would like to operate is where it has a designated use that I've decided. versus just being this extension of myself, like a cyborg with it attached to my hand, where the phone is now an extension of myself and my mind. I want it to instead feel separate, like a tool. You want to know how pervasive it is and make sure that I'm not being a hypocrite? Yeah, as soon as I finished filming this and got the thumbnail ready, I just randomly checked my email. It is hard. We will mindlessly revert back. But I just wanted to keep it real with you that even while working on this topic, I will go back to old habits and just randomly check my texts, like outside of the structured time that I plan to do it. It's not about being strict with ourselves. It's just about asking, what role do I want tech to play in my life? And then aiming to follow through on it, knowing that it will take some trial and error. There was so much that I wanted to include that I didn't have time for here, so I will definitely be doing follow-up videos on technology. All the links to everything is down below, and I really hope that this has been helpful to you.